Hello everyone, episode number 6 of the Gulshan Raz, the Rose Garden of Mysteries of Shaykh Mahmoud Shabestari. In the previous episode, we talked about the intellect, the first intellect, the Muhammadan reality, and how the prophets played a role in the path leading to the One. In this episode, we are going to talk about the mystics. What role do they play according to Shaykh Mahmoud Shabestari? So let's start by examining the poem we were investigating in the last episode. The first line of this episode says در این ره اولیا باز از پس و پیش نشانی داده‌اند از منزل خویش. That is, in the journey towards the unity with the real, with God, after the prophets, and like prophets, mystics also help people and their followers. And the part that says pas o pish, it means before and after. What the Sheikh is hinting here is this, like prophets, mystics also have different ranks, different levels. So according to the station they have reached in their journey, they start talking about their experiences. They paint a picture. They build a roadmap for people, for their followers, people who follow them, so that they can also get to the destination. Next we have به حد خویش چون گشتند واقف سخن گفتند در معروف و عارف. That is, when they got rid of the pluralities, when they got rid of the imaginary existence that people think they're having, and got to the real, got to the unity with the real, they started talking about their experiences. They started talking about the ma'ruf, that is the real, and they started talking about arif, that is the traveler in this journey, the knower, generally translated, but here we could translate it as traveler. Next, and this is where the story gets more interesting, is this: یکی از بحر وحدت گفت انا الحق یکی از قرب و بعد و سیر و زورق. If you have read Islamic metaphysics and Sufism before, you have heard of Mansur Hallaj, who famously or infamously said, I am the truth, that is in Arabic, Ana al-Haq. And he was killed, he was executed for saying this, because people did not understand what he was saying. They thought that he is really saying that I am God. But in fact, what he was saying was that he got to that unity with the real, and he was expressing that there is divine soul within ourselves, within, in quotation, as it is stated in the Quran, وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي, God says, I gave you, I breathed my spirit into him, Adam. So human beings' soul is divine. So when you discover that, and I'm using discover deliberately because it's not that you unite with the one, because for a union there should be two different realities, two beings, human soul and God, and those two realities unite. There is no reality, there is no being other than God, other than the real. So what is happening here is that you discover that unity. It's not that there is distinction, you do discover that there is this unity. And Hallaj realized that, and that's why he said, I am the truth, I am the real, and he was killed. So what the Sheikh is saying is this, from now on he's categorizing all the mystics. He's saying some people, like Hallaj, started saying, I am the truth, and the reason they did so was that there is this state in mysticism called Jazbe, we say in Farsi. That is, you get so absorbed into that mystical experience that you lose the awareness of yourself. You don't know what you are saying in that moment. So it is in that moment that Mansur Hallaj said that. Next line we have Yaki as qurb bu'du sayr zuraq. Not next line, the second part of this line. That is, other mystics, although they also got to that jazbe, that absorption into the real. But they still had their control. So they, instead of speaking openly, instead of saying all the mysteries in an open way, they started using in a symbolic language. They talked about the drop going towards the ocean being the ocean of unity with God, the drop being the traveler. They talked about the unity of the drop with the ocean. They talked about the boat traveling on this ocean and how it gets through the waves in this ocean. The next line says, یکی را علم ظاهر بود حاصل، نشانی داد از خشکی ساحل. Let's open this a little bit. We said that there are two aspects of the religion, be it Islam, Christianity, Judaism, but here we're talking about Islam in particular. So Islam has two aspects. The outward aspect governed by the set of divine rules, the divine law, that is the Sharia law. And there is the inner aspect that a traveler has to go through. And this realm is governed by mysticism and Sufism. But here I should make this note as a footnote that the way to get into the real, the inner aspect of the religion is still going through the outward aspect. So the traveler, the mystic, starts with the outward laws, the Sharia law, and obeying those laws and handling them, doing them. The inner door opens. It's not that you start today and the day after you get into the real aspect of this religion or the other religions. It doesn't work that way. It takes time. As Ibn Arabi tells us, you keep knocking that door, but you do not decide when that door is going to be open. The person on the other side of the door will decide that. Your job is to keep knocking, keep insisting. So here the Shaykh in the first part says, "Yeki ra ilm zahir bud hasil." That is, some people, some mystics, were only engaged with the outward aspect of the religion, that is with the Sharia law. So they did not know about the inner aspect. So they were warning people that the ocean is dangerous. So get to the shores, get to the dry lands. That's where your safety lies. And that shore, that dry land, what Shaykh means is the divine law, the Sharia law, the exterior aspect of the religion. In other words, some scholars say, don't get into the esotericism, just deal with the outward aspect. That is the safe region. Don't get into dangerous stuff. Next line says, یکی گوهر برآورد و هدف شد، یکی بگذاشت آن نزد صدف شد. That is, some people, like Hallaj or Ibn Arabi, dived into the depth of that ocean, the ocean of unity, and brought with them treasures. Like from the depths, they brought some mysteries and they presented it to other people. And when they did so, because people were not understanding what they were saying, they were stuck in the exterior aspect of the religion. They were blamed, they were imprisoned or tortured or even killed. So that's the first point. They brought out treasures and they got to be the subject of blame and harm. The second part of that line says, یکی بگذاشت آن نزد صدف شد. That is, some people, some mystics, although they also got to the depths of that ocean and got discovered those mysteries, they still did not disclose them. They kept them hidden. They kept them secret to be safe. Next we have یکی در جزء و کل گفتین سخن باز، یکی کرد از قدیم و محدث آغاز. Some people who were afraid, some mystics who were afraid of being killed or harmed, they started talking about the same thing because they were still trying to build that roadmap for others to help them. Because like we said, after the prophets, the mystics come into play and they help others to walk in this journey. But instead of speaking openly, like saying the secrets openly, they covered them with those fancy technical words. And here I want to pause and I want to add something other than this line. Because one of the problems of our time, the modern contemporary time where non-experts step into these technical things is that they don't study the principles, the fundamental things in this field. I'm talking about Islamic mystical literature, particularly Persian poetry, mystical poetry. So these are hardcore philosophical matters. People without any foundations just start reading them and take everything in the face value. Persian mystical philosophical literature is extremely symbolic. To avoid being killed, to avoid being tortured, to avoid being prisoned, those mystics were using symbols when they were saying poems. They are speaking philosophy, they are speaking mysticism through the tongue of very normal, ordinary things. I am Iranian, so when we get through this education, first we learn those codes, we learn what these symbols mean. That's how you understand what you're gonna understand from the text. And it's sad and extremely dangerous that people with no expertise and without bothering to read the fundamentals start speaking as an expert. They start saying, no, you're wrong, this is what the author is saying. Look what they did to Maulana Rumi. He was a giant Muslim figure, a Muslim intellectual whose work has been reduced to smelling flowers, drinking wine, and dancing with his partner Shams Tabrizi. It's as if the modern man and woman, is trying to get the approval for their personal interests from these texts, but it doesn't work that way. We are just circling around ourselves. So if you want to get into these technical matters, my advice, first learn the fundamentals, first learn the principles. That's going to help a lot in understanding what is going on there. So let's get back to the poem. یکی در جزء و کل گفتین سخن باز، یکی کرد از قدیم و محدث آغاز. Some mystics were careful. They, knowing the dangers of what was going to happen to them, like what happened to Hallaj or what happened to other people, to avoid the blame, to avoid the harm, they started talking symbolically. Instead of saying everything openly, they started using some symbols, or in some cases philosophical terms. For example, it says some people talked about the particular and the universal, and some of them started talking about the eternal, the being with no beginning, the being with no end. Basically, these are philosophical terms of speaking of the real. They were still discussing those mystical matters, but still through the tongue of philosophy here. The particular and the created being, all the entities that we see in this world, all the beings, human being, this desk, that tree, everything. And the universal, and the perpetual, the immortal, the being with no beginning, the existent who is not bound by existence. So these are all the technical philosophical terms that they started to use to talk about the real, to talk about God. یکی از زلف و خال و خط بیان کرد، شراب و شمع و شاهد را عیان کرد. And some people got hardcore into symbolism. My interpretation, of course, that's not what Shaykh is saying. Shaykh is using some special symbols. For example, he says some started talking about a strand of hair, lines, even a mole on your face, a black mole. They talked about wine. They talked about candle. And what these symbols meant was that they were still talking about the same things. They wanted to talk about the same things without getting into trouble. And this is the reason why the prophets and in Shiism imams did not open up everything in public. Not everyone had the educational preparedness or even some spiritual preparedness to understand and to receive kindly all these matters. So, for example, in the symbolism that we have in Persian literature, the strand of hair and line basically means plurality, the plurality in the corporeal world. Wine means love, the divine love, and the mystical, that sweet experience that you get in a mystical vision. So you see, these are symbolic things that the authors, the poets were using, and people get them in the face value and say, oh my god, they were drinking wine. No. Read the basics, read the fundamentals. Otherwise, don't get into technical things. Sham in Persian, that is candle, represents the radiation of the divine light that is reflected on the traveler's heart. Shahid, for example, in this line we had, that is the observer, the witness. The witness is the manifestation of the essence of the real. Next we have یکی از هستی خود گفت و پندار، یکی مستغرق بتگشت و زنار. The Shaykh is saying that you cannot get to the unity when you're still stuck in the plurality, when you're still stuck in that otherness, when you're stuck in you, in I, that there is an I. Unless you get rid of that, you cannot get to that plurality, because in that case you still think that there is an I and there is the other, that there is the one. And that's why some mystics, the line is saying, the first thing that they were doing in helping students in this path, the person who journeyed in this path, was to help them to get rid of their self, the imaginary self, their imaginary identity that they thought they have, that otherness. They had to get rid of that cover, that otherness, to be able to get to the unity with the Almighty. The second part of the line says, "Iki mustaghraq bot gashto zonnar." So bot means idol. So I encourage those contemporary modern people who take everything in their face value in these philosophical works to interpret this. Here, if we take it in face value, the Shaykh is basically saying people who are absorbed into the idol fastened their belt. So, in other words, they were worshipping idols. Is that so? Is that what this whole thing is saying? Like, if we take that, it goes against every single line in this book. That's not what the Shaykh is saying. These are symbols. Being absorbed into that idol basically means being absorbed in the unity with the one. So don't take the face value. Let's learn the basics. Let's learn the symbolic language of these poems. So here the line is saying some mystics got absorbed into the unity. They were still diving and swimming in that ocean, into the depth of that ocean. They were still going forward. Fastening the belt means like they were trying their best to journey in this path. They were not stopping after getting to a certain station that, look, this happened, I got to this station, let's slow down. Next we have سخنها چون به وفق منزل افتاد در افهام خلایق مشکل افتاد. That is, every mystic that was traveling in this journey, they got to different stations, and because they had different stations, one came to this level, one came a little bit higher, the other even higher. So every one of them was talking about the station that they were at. That's why we were receiving different accounts, but still the soul of all those accounts is one. But they are talking of the experiences that they have because they have different levels that brought different accounts. And the last line, کسی کاندر این معنی است حیران ضرورت می شود دانستن آن. That is, it is the duty of the mystic that when a person asks a question and who is puzzled and bewildered by a question or by these explanations, it is the duty of the mystic to open this up. That's the reason why he said I started writing this book, because if you remember from our first episode, we said that the mystic from the Khorasan sent him, Shaykh Mahmoud Shabestari, a letter containing several mystical philosophical questions. And that's why he says, well, he was puzzled, he was asking those questions, so I saw fit to answer all those questions in this book. Fellows, that is the end of this episode. Thank you very much for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget liking the video because it will help the channel. Stay well. See you soon.